insight, tools, and stories from other changemakers designed to motivate you to become the change you want to see in your world. Make sure you join our Changemakers community at runemagnus.com/podcast. And now it is time for you to sit back, relax, and enjoy. And we are live. Good evening from Iceland, and hello New York City, where we have the amazing friend of mine, Leslie Grossman. And just as Leslie and I were preparing for this live Facebook event from one of the Changemakers event, we started to talk about how we met each other originally, because our event today is going to be about one of the things that I know Leslie is an expert in. I know that she's an expert in many things, but one of the things that really is, I would say, her X factor is to be able to simplify and the whole process of building your network or building your entourage, as she talks about it. And remember the first time when the two of us met? It was in one of your events. You had so gracefully invited me to be one of your speakers at the Women's Leadership Exchange, and it was in the beautiful island of Bermuda. And that was 9 years ago, right?
Yes, at least.
At least.
At least 9
Yeah, and when we come to the topic of what we want to talk about today, the topic about how do you build a network that is long-lasting and it just grows. I mean, aren't we just the perfect example?
We are.
Yeah.
We're perfection here, and with an ocean between us. No
exactly.
less.
Yeah, exactly. And that has never, ever stopped us, has it?
Never.
No. We've always been there. And that brings me to the first question that I want to ask you, Leslie. There are so many people out there, leaders who are leading their organizations, their teams, their businesses, community, even nations. And one of the things that they are told they have to do is that they have to grow their network. They have to get out there and have to know people, get to know people. And for some people, it can be really easy and comes naturally. But then there are those and they seem to be, at least I'm hearing more and more of the ones who don't find it easy. They find it really difficult. And I want to ask you, what are the things that you see leaders that are in that position that they can do to build their network?
I'm so glad you asked that question. But before I answer the how of that question, what can they do? Let me just share the why it's so important.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you have to understand the why in order to push you to do the how. And the why is that no effective leader can do it alone. No way. And it doesn't matter whether you are the highest of the high, the corporate CEO with 500 employees, or you're the CEO of a small business, or you're the middle manager that wants to move up. If that matters to you, you have to have great people around you. You have to have your informal advisory board of people that you trust and they trust you, or you will never move off of that stool wherever it is. And research, when I wrote the book Link Out, I did all the research to prove that. And you look at any leader and you dive in deeply enough, you will find out they were surrounded by other people. And I'm not talking this time about their team, although the team is another aspect to being surrounded by people that you trust and they trust you. There's two pieces to it. But the why, just from the networking perspective, the exterior, you have to be out there. I don't like to use the word network, although that's a way to get there. You have to they're building trusted relationships with people.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And networking is a way to begin that process for sure. Networking and introductions to great people by people that you know, but networking is the way. So now I'll talk about networking.
Mm-hmm.
But you with me? I mean,
yeah.
everybody out there, are you with me?
Yeah, well, that would be nice to see if they go, yes, we're with you. Yeah.
Because the thing is that you have to know if this is going to be meaningful to you, you have to say, I'm committed to this because I really do want to move ahead. I want my business to grow. I want my corporation. I see myself somewhere else. I don't want to just sit here for the rest of my life. So that's the why. And now the how. So, okay, you don't like to go to networking. Let's assume you don't love it because guess what? Most people don't. Even people that you think are, I've learned people that you think are extroverts because they act like they're extroverted are often really introverts. And they would rather not be going to these events. They would rather be at their desk working or sitting with their family or friends. So how do you do it? Well, you push yourself. You acknowledge that I'm going to be uncomfortable and start to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is one of my favorite phrases. And then, first of all, I would suggest don't go alone. You can bring someone with you, a colleague, a friend, another person from another company. That right away will make you feel a little more secure. And also, then you've got two people out there. You might meet someone and then you can bring them over and introduce them to your colleague. Or you make a pact, your colleague is talking to someone and they'll bring them over to you. But together, it makes it more comfortable. Yeah. And I think to go into any room, believe me, I have the same experience. When I go to a conference and I don't know anybody, I'm nervous about it. What do? I talk to the person. If I'm sitting I always talk to the people next to me, sitting next to me. That's how I get it started because at least then you begin to warm up and have a conversation, right? And you ask questions about them. It's not about you. I think one of the things that intimidates people is they say, oh, I don't want to have to talk about myself. I don't know how to describe what I do in a way that's going to sound good. Guess what? You don't have to talk about yourself. You don't have to introduce yourself that way. You ask the other people about themselves. Be curious. Be interested. And that gets you off the hook. Because people love to be asked questions about themselves. And then once you know something about them, then you'll have a way to connect and share something that you share in common that you can answer back. And then you'll comfortably be able to introduce yourself.
Yeah.
So those are some ways to get started. And I think that how do you get a little more comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Well, it is important to be, comfortable about being uncomfortable and knowing the fact that the more uncomfortable I am, I'm stretching that rubber band that is holding me back. And
right.
Yeah.
And I'd like to add one more thing before you ask the question, but hold that question. Yeah. And I don't know, I'd like to recommend that everyone watch Amy Cuddy's TED Talk. Amy Cuddy, Cuddy. And she's a Harvard professor who writes about executive presence, how you hold yourself, how you present yourself. And there are things that you can do before you walk into a networking event that will give you more confidence. Yeah. How you hold your body, how you breathe, going into the Superman pose or Superwoman pose. Those are, or like hands on the hips, chest out. Yes, breath in.
Okay, yeah.
I'm ready for this. How about you, Runa?
Well, I know. I mean, this really has to do with your mindset. You go into a place and it really is about centering yourself before you go in, like mind-wise. What is my intention? What is it what sort of a feeling do I want to give into this into the world that I'm entering. So yeah, I can get that. But I didn't know there was I like that. I'm going to put that into our show notes, the name of this TED Talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is probably, sounds like there are tips there that you can really use.
Absolutely. So having that presence, breathing and feeling and saying and smiling when you go in the room. Oh, smiles. Smiles go very far. Not going in like this. I don't really want to be here. So
exactly.
Talk to me. But if you can pretend and go in happy, oh, I'm going to a party. This is going to be fun. You know, even that self-talk, it's that, that little voice in our head that says this is going to be awful. You can turn that voice around and say, hey, this is going to be wonderful. Let that little voice tell you that you're going to meet two interesting people. It's not about coming away and having met two handfuls. Just meet one or two interesting people that you connect with, that you're going to want to go have coffee with afterwards. That's a successful event.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings me to the next question. You talk about that smile and that you come in and you are ready. You're mentally ready for just, I would say, work your sexy factor. You're just going to allow yourself to shine a little bit when you go in there. I know that you've been working in cultures such as Japan, and I know that there are cultural differences that we can always be, and especially when in the world that we're living in today, there are just so many cultural things that we're constantly clashing with on the top of everything else. What is your experience on that? Is it the same thing that I could do if I go to a Japanese, as an example, event? Can I smile and do my sexy factor bit?
Excuse me. Yes, you can. You might be a little bit, look, depending upon what country you're in, you might pull back a little bit, but you can definitely smile, because most cultures, they want to do business with people that they have a relationship with. So you can start the relationship by being interested in the other person.
Yeah, that's universal.
That's universal. Being interested in the other person. Being polite. Some cultures are more polite. Like in the U.S., people are a bit more casual. But you know what? Having presence, you have, and being interested in other people is a universal practice.
Yeah.
So, and then, when we talk even about relationships with your team.
Yeah, that's another thing, exactly, because then building that relationship and that trust that you mentioned that you need to have in order for you to basically do anything. Tell us about that. What are the tricks that you can, as a leader? I think you need to have a glass of water or something, Leslie.
I'm going to have a little twig.
Have a sip. Yeah, have a sip. Yeah. Yeah. In the meantime, because when I'm saying, talking about teams, I think what I've experienced myself when it comes to working in teams, that thing about trust is so vitally important. Absolutely. So what are the things that you see as when you're building your entourage or your team there? What are they? Tell us a little bit about that when it comes to linking out.
Well, it's really not terribly different. The only thing is that if you're the team leader, it depends where you're coming from. Are you, what's your leadership style? Are you an authoritarian leader that just goes in and says, do this, do that? When you have a one-to-one meeting with people, who sets the agenda? You do? Or do you let them set the agenda? Do you warm up the conversation by being interested in what's going on in their life? Just like the curiosity thing. People that care about other people, that care about their team members, get more from them. They want to work for them. They want to work harder. And if you also, I have a whole way that we use setting an agenda, it's like, well, when you go into a meeting, do you start by saying, okay, did you finish this? Did you do that? Or do you start the meeting by saying, so what would you like to discuss today? What's important to you in the work that you're doing?
Yeah.
Asking them, let them lead by asking them really good, open-ended questions that they can bring up. What are your challenges? What's going well? Tell me what's going great.
Mm-hmm.
Or what are the things that you're having some challenges with? Let's talk about them. Instead of being that boss that just sets that agenda. Again, it's a curiosity thing. And always smile and be warm. So the principles actually overlap. And I've been working with two women, in fact, that the relationship thing was really a big part of, which I didn't realize until we started to work together. One of them, though, when I met her, I said, my God, she's got such great presence. I bet she's intimidating. You know, she's beautiful. She holds herself well. So I asked her about her relationships. She doesn't really know her direct reports that well. When she goes to a meeting, she never hangs around after the meeting to talk to people informally, and they don't come up to her. So she didn't realize what an intimidating force she was just by her presence. Yeah. So it's really quite interesting to see how there are things that the warmth, the welcoming, the curiosity works internally and externally.
Yeah. And exactly. And the curiosity, allowing yourself to be curious, because I think also for many, and that probably is a cultural thing as well, that it is not polite to ask questions, that all questions are, you shouldn't be noisy. You shouldn't be asking those things, which I personally think is a myth, especially if you go on to just asking those questions like you just mentioned before, that are, friendly questions and shows that you're interested in that person.
Right. I mean, you have to, obviously, depending on the culture and whether it's an internal or external, you ask different. Yeah. But when you're networking, just by asking a person, tell me about your work, tell me what you're doing that's exciting you right now, and letting them talk. And then you can, as simple as saying, tell me more about that. You don't have to be asking specifics like you're nosy, but kind of just leave it open to them to tell you more. Then it's their choice what they say, but you're just showing an interest in them.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So in your book, Link Out, you shared some of the most valuable tips that I have personally used several times. Yes, didn't you know that? I do. And one of the tips that I have found to be extremely useful for me is asking people in my network for their advice. And that was one of the things that I realized for myself when I was reading your book, that somehow I had not done that. And on so many occasions when I asked for their advice, I just tell them very honestly, well, I'm doing this. I'm looking for this. Obviously, I have to be clear. What would you think that, or how would you go about it? Or can you give me any insight? What would you do? And what I have experienced all the time is that they say to me, hey, I know such and such. I will just link you with him or her. And instead of me maybe coming and saying, do you know anyone who is this, that you can connect me with? I'm not asking you that. I'm just asking, what would you do? Or how would you go about it? Or, I'm creating that conversation. I always get that, hey, I will just connect you. This is one of the things that you talk about in the book, apart from all the other things that I think is really valuable. So it's linked out, the book, and I will put the link to linked out so that you can buy the book. But there are these little things that often you think, oh, that's so simple. That's so simple. Why haven't I thought about that before?
Right. No, that's great to hear. And it's true. Mm-hmm. And it's different when you ask, like you're explaining, for advice, and then the person says, oh, I want to introduce you to this person who could really give you some support in that area. And you could actually help each other. Mm-hmm. You could be good for each other. That's different than, now I want everybody to know, link out is not about using LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I mean, link out means this knowing people, having a conversation either in face-to-face or maybe just like Runa and I are now, and then asking that. Not when I say not like LinkedIn, and I'm not downgrading it because it has great value if you know how to use it properly. Mm-hmm. But it's not a stranger coming to you, on LinkedIn that maybe you accepted as a friend who you don't really know at all, and they're asking you to make an introduction for them. That's very different. So I just want to be clear on that.
Exactly. This is what I may mention as well as I only do this with people that I know.
Right.
They know me, so they because I know that from personal branding perspective that you are. I mean, I'm not going to link anyone to anyone else unless that I know that person, because I know that they are going to be linked. The reason why they're going to accept that connection is because they know, like, and trust me. Well, I hope they like, but they know and trust me.
Right. And
so, yeah.
And one of the things I'd like to suggest that those who are listening do is sometimes you don't realize how many people you know that you would like in what I call your entourage, people around you that could help you, and you could actually help them too, because it is a collaborative thing. And I ask clients they'll say, oh, maybe I know 3 people that I could really have coffee with and build. And then when I ask them to write the list, they come up with 20 or 40 names.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you often don't realize how many people you admire, you've connected with, you've met them, or they might be internal in your organization. They could help you inside the organization until you start to write those names down.
Yeah, that's a really good exercise. And really start to look at what are their expertise and what are they doing, and how can I help them?
That's right. How can we help each other?
Yeah, that's a really good. I think from that end, I see that we are on our 25th minute right now. On that end, I would like to thank you so much, Leslie, for your insights. There's going to be a whole lot more about you as one of the change makers, as the change makers are here to hold, to support and be that invisible hand that is supporting leaders who want to make a positive difference in this world, and they need different tools and different skills and different helping hand. Then that's where the change makers come in. So Leslie, I know it's just afternoon for you, it's evening here in Iceland, and I want to again thank you so much. For anyone who is listening, feel free to share this. If this was of value to you and your network, I'm sure that there are other people out there who would like to dig in and know more about how to build your network or net worth or your entourage. From that, I'm going to say bye-bye or bless, like we say in Iceland. Feel free to share the love. Bless.
Bye-bye.
If so, feel free to share the love and give us your generous review on iTunes, Stitcher or Spotify. And remember, you can always go to runamagnus.com and find out more about the changemakers and how we can help you driving the change you want to see in your world.